fairly highly prized duo for a while. Try and take that into the bot lane. That's certainly nothing to scoff at.
Yeah, I think I would prefer something like the Nautilus for Camilius. He does actually have a very high win rate on it throughout the split. I believe it's 100% actually.
Okay.
And it's just going to be really good for giving you a little bit of that snap engage, which I feel GameWard's composition has in an extent in terms of this Wukong as well. But having those extra engage tools is just going to feel a little bit better for you. And I'm actually very, very interested to see both of these hyper carries banned away in the bottom side. GameWard recognizing that there's so many of those late game AD carries that you can actually play right now and trying to take as many as they can away from Reckless.
Importantly for Karmine Corp right now is they've got some very good early game skirmishing. As soon as they hit level 6, they are going to be absolutely popping with this topside composition.
Yes.
They're looking for something that is going to have a bit more staying power through into the late game. And a Reckless Tristana, you say that Sivir is his most sort of iconic associated champion. That may well be, but maybe his biggest highlight moment was the Tristana in Sweden.
Yeah.
Grabbing the pentakill. Like, this champion, again, fairly synonymous with Reckless. No surprises to see him take this. It also has a very good lane into the Zeri. A nice early game for the Tristana, so something that you can try and punish is this early game AD carry for GameWard.
And that's what we were talking about sort of in the pregame. If you're playing weak side, you've got two options. You can give someone a late game hyperscaling AD carry and leave them alone, or you can give them someone with a little bit more agency in the early game that they can have a fun time on. Tristana kind of offers you a little bit of both in that role to a certain extent.
It really does. My fear for GameWard right now is they've picked 5 very good ultimates for a Silas to steal, and we'll, we can touch on that a little bit later on when Seiken dings that level 6 marker. My surprise here is that Azir made it all the way through to B5 on a draft, because this seems like a pick for both of these two players that is so highly sought after. Seiken got Azir banned away from him very frequently in the regular season. So, like I say, quite surprised to see that slip all the way through to here, but we do have our full 5v5s locked in. Hantera rounds out the composition for Karmine Corp with a Leona. So, joining the dive force of Karmine Corp, and we look at the entirety of their composition, they've all got tools to go forward middle Corp. They're all going to be looking for the backline of GameWard.
This is very much a Karmine Corp composition. Aggression, going forward, not really caring about the consequences. And the thing that makes that so weird is that this is the... Let's go, everybody, on to Summoner's Rift for Game 1 in this best-of-5 matchup between GameWard and Karmine Corp. GameWard coming in as the higher seed into this matchup, but with the shaky end to the split that they've had, I think that Karmine may be a little bit more favored. We'll have to see how these teams duke it out in Game 1.
Kind of curious. I think that Game 1 could very easily set the standards for this series. Honestly, I think that if GameWard take the first game, then we could be on for a series, but part of me thinks that if Karmine Corp wins the first game, they're just going to roll this series entirely. But, you know, that's pure speculation, pure conjecture at present. GameWard, the ones that are starting out with something just a little bit more spicy. 5-man stacking in a brush. There's something that we've seen from a lot of mid laners and a lot of teams is going for this deep invade onto the Raptors fairly late on. And GameWard just making sure that if that does happen, they've got a way to deal with it.
Yeah, but doesn't appear that Karmine Corp are going to go too aggressive with their aggressive composition just yet, as minions are roaming on to the Rift. Both junglers starting on the top side of the map, it does appear, so a bit of focus on the bot lane potentially in the early stages.
Yeah, certainly, you know, keeping their options open and could obviously make their way down to the bot lane. Check the starting push in this mid lane could very well be important as the game goes on. Obviously, we mentioned taking a very big proponent of the push and roam mentality. But if he's not being, if he gets pushed in a little bit in this early game, certainly may struggle. I want to touch on the rune choices for this mid lane in particular. Checo opted into the Conqueror as opposed to something that we've seen quite frequently actually versus the Silas, which is the First Strike. First Strike obviously a lot more early game dominant. Makes sure that you can scale up to that late game a little bit quicker. Get those items in your back pocket and also deal a little bit of extra chip damage. But for Checolad right now, focused purely on the late game, opting into that Keystone, which is going to serve him so well in those late team fights.
Yeah, and obviously in the early stages, range versus melee, you would expect to have the shovel, though Karmine Corp could be setting up something a little bit tasty very, very early into the game. With his Seiken chunked as low as he is, I don't think 113's really got a shot of making a gank work.
Yeah, very good posturing from Checolad, honestly, just recognizing that the top side was going to be where 113 had started. And, you know, quite wisely.
113 flash Spectrum Wall to get the stun onto Checolad. He's going to find Akabane, though, and you've got no flash now.
On this.
First game of playoffs, 113. What the bloody hell was that, man?
Yeah, that was ill-advised. Seiken forces the flash.
Yeah, but he's going to have to flash back himself. Karmine Corp getting a little bit over-eager in the early stages.
What did you say, Middle Cop? Pure aggression?
Yeah.
Karmine Corp's mentality, and they've exemplified that in minute 2. I don't think 113 is ever finding that solo kill on an Azir. I'm sorry, dude. Viego just doesn't have that much damage, and it does cost him dearly. I mean, Akabane got a 3 camp clear, was able to move into that mid lane, use his full advantage, use the full top side. They're all spotted. Reckless and Hantera are known to be in this bot side river. And it's going to cost them a little bit of their roam timing. Making a lot of effort now to try and punish Checolad, which is gone ultimately by the wayside.
It's not going to happen. Reckless has been spotted on a ward for so long, and this is not the early game that Karmine Corp had needed. He's still there! Oh, no.
This is the worst Jaws movie ever.
This is not Jaws. This is Jaws if Jaws was like a piece of fish that has been battered and sat in the counter of a chip shop for about 3 hours.
True.
That is not a threatening piece of fish.
Unfortunate for Reckless, but he does get a big wave to cash in down on this bot side. GameWard actually don't take this opportunity to reset, which does surprise me a little bit. I would have expected this sort of fairly decent crash under the turret that they'd try and spend their gold. Looks like they're actually going to go and do it now, but they are going to be a little bit delayed on that. So 10 seconds behind means they're probably going to miss a couple waves, or a couple minions rather, to the natural nature of laning phase. Could have been a little bit better, but they do still make the most of it. They get a free reset in. Have a shot up, rather where Karmine Corp, excuse me, are going to have to try and work a little harder to get that. And
I don't think the GameWard are going to be complaining about how the early stages of this game have gone. They've got a composition which is going to scale very, very nicely. And getting first blood on that man in the mid lane onto Checolad, the player that we said needed to step up, is a perfect start to the series.
Two people shadowing him as well. It's 3 people from either side, near enough in this mid lane. Checo not necessarily close to level 6 just yet. Probably needs another wave or so, but that extra XP from first blood means that he can be making those Shurima shuffles fairly soon. And with a Wukong, as that level 6 comes online, these 2 champions are going to be very well adept trying to take down an enemy. Taken 2 pieces way back into the mid lane to try and clear out a little bit of these minions, as GameWard quite happy to stick around in this mid lane. Camilius also just showing his face a little bit here. Good ward from Seiken. Always a fan of when mid laners put down this ward to spot out what their enemy laner is doing with this time. It's something that you can do very well. This is the likes of Karmine Corp when Seiken has that push and roam champion. Also something that when you're losing a bit of lane prio, you can do very well also. Yeah,
it's going to force the TP out from Checolad, so going to have to use that summon spell to get back into the mid lane. Karmine Corp, though, starting up this Ocean Drake very, very early into the game. And this is one of the few Drakes where taking it early into the stage is actually going to have a very big impact on you, because the healing that you get passively from that Ocean Drake is actually fairly substantial.
Exactly. I think it's one of the best early Drakes to take, maybe even the best middle cart. And of course, this is pre-12-14, where there are all the changes to the dragons. So we are seeing very quick takes available for you, and not necessarily the same impact, the same need to try and take those dragons so early on. Nevertheless, Karmine Corp going to be opting into it, and they are going to have that nice amount of sustain through the laning phase. You can afford to take a slightly worse trade now and get a bit of a beneficial help.
Yeah, and something that is perplexed me to a certain extent about is how much this game has been about the mid lane. Obviously, 113 going for that play is sort of necessitated that a bit more attention is put towards the mid half of the map, but we're now seeing an engage from Karmine Corp in the bot lane. That is an excellent handshake from Camilius. It might not now, though, as Karmine Corp are being forced away as Akabane is here on the play. 113 has got the flash from earlier, and he is going to be able to use it defensively as Hantera going back in, but the clone is still up from Akabane, so he can get away just fine.
No kills traded down on the bot side, but still a few cooldowns expended. Camilius forced to burn both summoner spells, heal from Reckless and flash from Hantera. Of course, the Hex flash ready for Liliana means that her engage capabilities by no means limited by not having that summoner spell. as both of these mid laners now have some fairly decent CC capabilities open to them also. See whether or not 113 makes a bit of an impact in this mid lane. Abscond of Duck goes wide, and Checo spacing nicely in this mid lane. That wave's going to be coming back out toward him. Should be feeling A-okay.
Yeah, he's also managed to build a fairly decent CS lead for himself, and we haven't really talked about top lane so far in this game, which is weird when Karmine Corp are playing, because they do like to put a lot of attention towards Cabochard, as we're seeing 113 growing up here just to cover the push in. But it means that Melonic on this Gwen is having a free time to farm up as much as he'd like, as Akabane is here, level 6 on the Wukong, and Cabochard is nowhere near Mega. Here comes the needle one, but 113 actually gets the first kill of the fight, takes over the Wukong, and now Cabo could start to lay down the auto attacks. 113 fighting back, securing the first kill of this series for Karmine Corp.
Lying in wait, able to turn around the play. Cabochard knew that he was going to be the focus of some attention, trying to push in that wave in Mininar when Melonic has that ulti. Is obviously very brazen by Cabo, but he's got his jungler there. He has the support, and they're more than capable of taking down the Wukong. No Divine Sunderer completed for Akabane. That spike not quite there yet, not quite ready to send GameWard into an early game dominant position. Instead, we go back to neutral, a 1-for-1 gold lead, largely even across both sides. A disparity between those junglers versus a disparity in the mid lane. Certainly very tense for game number 1, and I hope this sets the tone for the series.
I hope so as well, as 8 and a bit minutes on the clock means that Rift Herald is available, and Karmine Corp are going to be able to take away both of the early game objectives. And do you know what, Root? I really like that from 113, because he has been inconsistent as a jungler, and we've already actually seen that in this game. Flashing at the level 2 to try and get a kill onto the Azir was never really going to happen, but lying in wait when you see that a lane is a little bit overextended, that the enemy jungler might want to go for it, I think that's the 113 that I want to be seeing.
I do also, and we're familiar very much so with the duality of man as a concept, and I think that 113, there's the duality of him specifically that we've already seen exemplified through game number 1. Now this is going to have to be smited away. Akabane does secure it, the clone. They do a good job. Akabane flashes the Zenith Blade there. Terra was on vision, but not going to be able to get away with that one, and it is ultimately a blue for a smite and a flash.
Yeah, not the most exciting play that we've seen come out, as 113 is going to be applying a little bit of pressure towards his spot lane. Does have that Rift Herald in inventory, but with Akabane lying in wait as well, not going to summon the big purple Shelly just yet.
No, and what we can actually see right there is that GameWard have so much priority, because Reckless really just forced a fight with Inax. You can see that Buster Shot has been used. Inax's HP far too low to try and stick around and defend, and now Camilius is going to have to do a 2v3 effort with Akabane to try and keep this turret alive. Yeah,
113 going a little bit 2v1 at the moment, and crucially no level 6 for the Renata Grass, so can't get that hostile takeover going, can't get Karmine Corp fighting amongst themselves. It's just going to be the Rift Herald summoned here, and because Reckless was hitting down onto that tower, should be able to pick up a few plates.
Correct. Nice to see gold funneled into the late game hyper carry that is a Tristana, of course. We mentioned that Trist does very well in the early game versus Azeri. The beauty of Tristana is that she scales incredibly well, also has the largest base range of any AD carry when we hit that level 18 marker. And of course, having the resets, having that ability to pop off in a team fight, certainly not going to be something that Karmine Corp are going to be sad about either. Their composition does thrive very much so off of getting one kill and then resetting. Tristana and Viego, 2 champions that obviously demand those resets for optimum team fighting. And when you've got 2 champions that are going to be diving into the front line, yes, it's a Gwen and a Wukong who can buy space and quite easily be quite slippery as well in that front line. A lot of pressure on Karmine Corp to try and find that initial kill, to try and set themselves up for the snowball team.
But they have definitely built a composition that is going to reward that skirmishing. You've already touched on how the Viego and the Tristana love that. The Gnar and the Sylas are also these champions that, in those longer team fights, when they can get multiple rotations coming out, are actually incredibly effective. And if Cabochard is getting to an end of a team fight, transforming into that mini form and can chase down some people as well, it would look very, very good for Karmine Corp. But as it stands, very even in this game. 12 minutes on the clock. Basically dead even on that gold lead, with only the Drake really the advantage for Karmine Corp.
And I want to give a little bit more credit over to Karmine Corp for the way that they drafted this as well. We sort of laughed a little bit at the Sylas on R2. One of the good things about taking Silas was they took it in conjunction with the Gnar. And if you're familiar, Gnars when they steal Gnar, or Silas's rather, when they steal Gnar ults, tend to have a fairly big impact. By taking the two together, they prevented that eventuality from GameWard and actually have these two very strong skirmish champions for themselves. So something that I missed a little earlier on. Want to give them the credit for right now as Huntera spotted out Camilius.
Oh, that's another exceptional handshake from the GameWard support, and that ultimate ain't bad either. Akabane finding an engage with the Cyclone is going to use the second cast as well. Karmine Corp in a 4v3, but they are losing. Huge stolen Emperor's Divide, but it's just going to send Sacred to his death. And GameWard fight against the early game aggressive team in Karmine Corp and come out on top.
Remember what I said about this composition for GameWard. They've got two champions that deal very well with engage, Renata and Azir. Both those ultis coming together to give a 3v4 teamfight victory to GameWard. Inax's first cleanse.
Yeah, going to be forced away as a 1-1-3 pulled back by the handshake. Akabane is going to grab another kill as Reckless is trying to do as much damage as he can, but it's not quite enough to take out the Wukong. 3 for 1 on the board for GameWard.
Don't have smite, so they don't feel comfortable trying to secure this objective just yet. Second smite, though, ticking up, and Akabane will be able to take this Drake. They see Reckless down in the bot lane, so they know they have this time, this window, to make the most of their time out on the map. With 1-1-3 still dead, they feel good enough to go for it, as Reckless just jumped forward.
Yeah, risky
has no reset.
Business for the Karmine Corp AD carry, who doesn't really have a way out of this situation. Akabane can beat him up and grab his third kill of the game.
Divine Sunder on Wukong is such a massive spike. It demands respect and unfortunately was not given over by the Karmine Corp AD carry. Akabane making the most of his time, getting the Drake, getting another kill now down in the bot lane, and Reckless steps a little just too far forward. Unfortunately sent back packing from that bot lane, and GameWard now starting to amount themselves a nice little lead.
And the thing is, it's coming out that sort of mid-jungle duo. Checoladder's really exploded the CS lead that he's got over Seiken 20 now on the Azir, which is arguably going to scale a little bit better. And Akabane has built up a pretty decent-sized lead for himself in the jungle as well. So that duo is really, really working out for GameWard and has propelled them to a 2,000 gold advantage.
Yeah, this mid lane matchup, honestly, kind of scary right now if you're Karmine Corp. Checo has the run of things for the first few levels, and then as soon as this first mythic comes online as well, you really start to see why the Azir has been so highly prioritized and why I was so surprised to see it make its way all the way through to that 5th pick on blue side for GameWard. You can just see, look at him, stepping up and feels confident, bullying at a moment's notice. He's got Liandry's completed already versus just the components of an Everfrost. Forsaken, so he's going to be absolutely murdering in this mid lane. He's got a lot of time now to push in the wave, roam around the map, and try and set up for success with the rest of GameWard. But akin to what we tend to associate with GameWard, you see immediately pushes in that wave. He's now got 20-30 seconds out on the map before he's bound by another mid lane wave to catch. He's going to use that time to force Cabo Shard off that turret in the top lane. Gives Inax even more gold, as we're expecting him to be able to take that turret, but it is coming at the cost of Karmine Corp and all of their pressure trading down on the bot side.
Yeah, and funneling that gold into Reckless is a pretty good place to find it. I think for Karmine Corp, they're not completely panicking right now, as they're actually going to be able to take this inner tower as well. So definitely getting the beneficial side of this trade, and maybe evened up this game to a point where they're going to feel comfortable making a few more aggressive plays.
Playing to Reckless here. I love to see this style from Karmine Corp. They gave him the first Herald, gave him a couple of plates down in that bot lane for themselves after the fact down in that bot side. Just the difference of champions right here. Tristana is a much better demolitionist than we see from Inax. So not forced to flash, but Cabo Shard looking a little bit dauntingly there on the Nard. Does force the Azir to back away.
Yeah, and I think the thing for me is we're seeing a few of these outer towers start to fall. Mid lane towers are the big ones, because those are the towers that once they fall, you can push your vision lines a little bit further. You can start setting up traps in the enemy jungle. And I think both of these teams have got excellent compositions if the enemy team is walking into them from darkness.
And you can see on that bot side jungle for GameWard, completely controlled by the Karmine Corp squad. They've got 2 wards down if they wanted to go through that bot side. I think they're now just actually starting to wear out, but you could also tell, that Karmine Corp, they used that push in and got some vision for it as well. So powerful that they're going to know pretty much where GameWard are and what they're up to at this time, as Huntera, the one leading the charge, searching for a rogue GameWard member Fortunately for Akabane, he's the one who's got the clone and got the mini dash.
Rift Herald summoned to take down that bot lane tower. Not the usual placement that we see, that objective place, especially when you've got a dragon coming up in a little bit over a minute. Typically, you see that put in the mid lane so you can generate a bit more priority, but Chekolad has basically had the run of this mid lane as we're starting to see an engage. Seiken pushes back Akabane, but with the Cyclone on, that means death for the rest of his team. The Berserk causes Karmine Corp to fight amongst themselves, and Cabo way too late TPing in to affect this fight.
Yeah, and he's TP'd, he's got Mega, but the handshake once again stopping the entirety of the Karmine Corp engage. Look at this top lane. Melonic didn't teleport, wasn't needed, and he made his way onto the turret. Doesn't manage to take it because Cabo Shard and the rest of Karmine Corp were threatening to move their way up to that top side. But again, a really great exchange by the GameWard squad. And yes, we saw Karmine Corp utilize their map movements to a more beneficial extent. And it's coming down to these team fights. GameWard are having the absolute run of things.
Karmine Corp just honestly fumbling the bag on a lot of these plays, and with that kill in the mid side, it means that Seiken's going to be a little bit later onto the map, and GameWard are most likely going to be able to pick up this Infernal Drake relatively for free. And because they didn't take both of the early game Drakes, if they can start stacking up these Infernal Drakes, then they're going to be incredibly powerful, even if they don't reach the soul.
Yep, you know, every single Drake that they take for a composition that has 4 carries means more adaptive damage, more AP, AD going on to the correct places. GameWard certainly going to be quite happy that they've secured themselves 1, if not more, of these Infernals. And you can tell Cabo Shard and Karmine Corp looking to play toward one another quite nicely. Trinity Force completed for the Gnar, opting into this Wit's End is a bit more of a split push oriented build that we've tended to see since Gnar has resurged in the meta. Gives him obviously a good amount of dueling power versus this Gwen as well.
Yeah, but it's going to be difficult for me to see how Karmine Corp are going to win out the 4v4s. If Cabo is 1v1ing Melonic on the other side, then you've lost one of your really strong engage tools. And yes, they can try and steal away an Emperor's Divide, but we saw how quickly it got exploded when he dove in that last fight.
I agree, and I think that for Karmine Corp, their options for this game should be fairly limited in large-scale team fights. Wherever there's a Renata, I think you just have to seed the notion that you can fight, but I think that what they can get away with is this Gnar in the side lane, or some split pushes, because there will come a time where Seiken can try and take a 1v1 versus Checo. It's unfortunately very far away, but in a 1v1, the Silas should have the run of things if the 2 mid laners are on parity, and whilst we're looking at those items and they're not too dissimilar, the important difference here is that level lead. Seiken just now dinging over to level 12, where Chekolad has been level 13 for a while now. The gold that comes from base statistics, certainly something that you need to keep your eye on.
Yeah, and I like this from Karmine Corp, though. They're not like going down without a fight. They're willing to trade these objectives to across the map to try and keep themselves at relative parity in terms of the gold. And looking at the AD carries, Reckless has actually got an item advantage over Inax, and a pretty significant one at that.
Yeah, you mean a full item.
As I say that.
Well, Inax had been saving, okay? You know, he took out a loan from the bank and then just finally managed to cash it on in. I don't know how loans work, middle cop. He got himself a nice little lead a nice little amount of gold in his back pocket. The 2 ADCs are about 200 gold apart, and the fact that they're 40 CS different, I think that the 3 assists and the turrets that have been fed into the AD carry is really starting to speak to that as well.
Yeah, to try and save a few of my blushes, Reckless is sat on around about 1,000 gold right now. So in terms of gold, maybe a little bit more even, but in terms of itemization, because Reckless did do that longsword start, he is going to be able to get to that Infinity Edge a little bit quicker than Inax, and that can be crucial.
3 item spike for both of these AD carries is going to be the difference, really, if one of them hits it when the other doesn't.
Oh, Camilius! Yeah, CC locked and exploded. Don't recall on a ward, that's all you can say about that.
And this could well be a fairly important turning point right now. With no support on the map, it may not seem like the big thing, but Camilius has been the one who's been turning these team fights, using the hostile takeover to turn a lot of these exchanges. And now with that support pick, they feel comfortable trying to step up to this mid turret. Fortunately, GameWard used a little bit of Melonic's time here to move down into the bot, or move down into the mid lane. Make sure that they can defend this tier 1 turret. It's coming at the cost of their jungle being ransacked. Right, it's going to be able to take away Cabo Shard's red buff. Sorry, thank you. Thank you. Top lane priority. Thank you very much.
It's top lane, side lane threat. You were talking about level disparity.
It does help him win.
Yeah, you were talking about level disparity in the mid lane. There's also that level disparity in the top lane, but going the other way. And that red buff does actually help you chase down this Gwen, who can be so elusive.
And also chase down the Azir, because it looks like, not quite sure which of the two teams initiated this, but they want to try and match levels with levels as opposed to lanes with lanes. Checo lad, the much more powerful part. Hantera.
Oh, going to be forced to flash away, but the Cyclone not going to catch him out from Akabane, trying to
My red buff.
claim his red buff back. There we go. Karmine Corp stole one away, and Reckless ends up with no red buff.
Unlucky. Unlucky indeed. Cabo knew he was going to split pushing in the bot lane. That missed agenda by Karmine Corp. You can tell that was a conscious decision. To give Cabo the first red buff. Reckless able to go back and take his for their own, but GameWard doing a good enough job at recuperating a little bit of that gold. Pantera forced to flash. We touched on the offensive probabilities of Leona's flash being down. Unfortunately, that doesn't go both ways. Hex flash you cannot channel whilst in combat, and if you get engaged on while you're caught out, you don't really have that tool to now escape. Of course, Leona's somebody who notoriously difficult to try and catch with Eclipse. But needs to, you still need to play with a little bit of caution, a certain element in your brain.
Just a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more chill. I like this, though. Stolen hostile takeover from Seiken. Sort of try and give Cavilius a little bit of a taste of his own medicine. As it is Karmine Corp that have the position around the Drake, but GameWard are forcing in the mid side. Akabane dipping away, doesn't quite have the Cyclone.
No, just a little bit of teasing, I suppose, by the GameWard jungler. Be wanting that Cyclone, it's just now available. Dragon pretty much taken though.
Yeah, going down really quickly. Akabane's not going to have a chance to get in, and the stolen hostile takeover onto two members of GameWard is enough to push them away from the start of this fight. Camillus' hostile takeover not going to land onto anyone on the back end, so Karmine Corp kind of get away with that scot-free, although pings are going down onto that Baron.
Zeri plus Azir do have a fairly quick Baron, particularly when you've got the Phantom Dancer and 2 completed items on your mid laner. A little bit risky, I feel like, from GameWard. They're certainly going to want to try and turn and take a fight. We've still got Cyclone, still got Shuffle and Lightning Rush ready, but this Baron is already very low.
Yeah, very low, and I'm not sure if 113 is going to be able to get in time. He is just there hovering on the vision part as GameWard actually going to look for the fight in stake. Seiken is golden, buying himself some time as there goes the crash down. It's 113, taking out the start of the fight. Huge from Checolad, shuffling into the backline as Kabashog cannot find a similar engage for Karmine Corp. It is a 1-for-1 right now, but it is GameWard who are going forward versus the 3-time EU Masters champions. Can't quite find the engage, though, and are going to have to back away.
Yeah, Checo goes a little bit too far forward there, unfortunately. Seiken with a very good flash, dodges out on that Shuffle, and probably saves the fight for Karmine Corp. They even translate this into a mid-tier 1 turret with Baron at about 20% HP, was about 2.5k health. Both the junglers call it off, and as soon as 113 goes down, that should have just been a 1-fight Checo lad, unfortunately. Stepped a bit too far forward and doesn't end up finding that big scoop. Reckless still with the flash, not even forced to get out to safety. And keep your eyes on the Viego and on Checo. Those are the two members that fall, and ultimately, through slightly overextended means. 113 goes a bit too far forward, gets caught out by the handshake, and at this point, GameWard can turn back to the Baron, but Checo goes too far, gets nobody for it. And no, not the target. The Leona, not the target. Seiken with a good flash and Reckless with great positioning. Never get caught out. Is that Karmine Corp are able to weather off that storm, and they're able to turn this into a mid-tier 1 turret also.
And it just goes to show how good the hands on many members of Karmine Corp are. The fact that they were able to play out the remainder of that fight. And Jack Alak going a little bit too forward, like you mentioned. And it's a guy that needs to be the big carry for GameWard. Already got 2 items completed on this Azir, slowly building towards that Zhonya's Hourglass as well.
Ding, ding, ding. Big item alert for everybody in the chat. Reckless has reached Infinity Edge now. He needs to be the focus of GameWard. If they can't get access to this Tristana, Reckless will be able to destroy them in a team fight. Infinity Edge is such a big boost, means that your critical strikes deal more damage. You have more flat AD just as a base. You have more crit strike chance. And if you get that explosive satchel onto somebody, you can probably one-shot them. Akabane may be the one exception that proves the rule here. because everybody else on GameWard is so squishy that Death Dance is probably going to be doing Akabane a lot of work if he's taking the brunt of this Tristana's damage.
Oh, Karmine Corp looking for an engage in the mid lane, but Cabochard smartly dodging away from the center of that solar flare, and Terra recognizing that he doesn't really want to commit to that play just yet. Starting to see what you were talking about a few minutes ago. Now, Seiken, operating on the side lane, does have 2 items on the Silas, so going to be a little bit more favored in those 1v1s matchups.
We touched on, the fact that Checo was essentially a full item up over Seiken. That lead has not continued. Seiken has done a good enough job at trying to catch back up. His build path, I will say, is a lot cheaper. The Everfrost and the Zhonya's are just cheaper items than Alejandri's would be. And with Checo Lad obviously working his way toward that Zhonya's Hourglass as well, you are pit stopping how strong you're going to be for a while. Stopwatch obviously provides you no combat stats outside of that one-time stasis, which is very, very powerful. And in all that time that Seiken has effectively been able to finish his Zhonya's and then now buy these components of what looks to be a Cosmic Drive, we see an outputone for Checo Lad.
Yeah, not the strongest in terms of like objective power level. I will say that stopwatch is big. It is absolutely worth a hell of a lot more than 650 gold or whatever the cost for it is. We may be able to use it effectively in this potential upcoming fight, as we do have a dragon spawning in 40 seconds. This would be soul point for both teams, as Melonic is on the wrong side of Summoner's Rift. Very, very speedy though on the ground, and might actually be Karmine Corp that are getting collapsed on as Checolad has TP'd in. Doesn't want to dive too far forward though.
Hello in Mini Nard does have his teleport also ready. There's a Drake spawning in 20 seconds, Milocop. That's what all this is about. Both the teams trying to make their differences felt. Remember, Reckless, the target for GameWard. Inax doesn't have Infinity Edge completed. This is a big difference that Karmine Corp are going to have in their favor heading into this fight. Can Reckless step up to take them? This objective jumps away, started all off.
113 might be fishing for a steal, but isn't going to be able to find it. Actually, is going to opt in for the fight as well, as GameWard are going to be forced to exit through Karmine Corp's jungle. This is not where they want to be right now, but Hantera doesn't want to be there either. Taken solo and is going to be taken out. First kill of the fight for Akabane as GameWard running away just in time. Cabochard is megging up, but he can't quite find the engagement just yet. And Axim is very, very low on mana, and summoning that Sun Disc, Checolad got a bit more safety under this bot lane. Oh my god, they don't want to stop. Reckless is just hanging. He's waiting for a dive to come through.
Yeah, they're corralling them. I don't know what's quite is happening here. Looks like they're trying to bait them to a place where they can recall, but Reckless, he's so strong. He feels confident to try and step up here. This is a 4v5 that Karmine Corp won.
And I'm not sure if they're going to be able to get it through to us.
They get away.
Run! GameWard are going to be breathing a sigh of relief because they get out of that dragon with Soul Point, and 30 minutes into the game, they are even with Karmine Corp.
Got a replay of this dragon, and I think that the fact that Reckless jumps away to initiate all this is just what GameWard needed. It is the slight edge that gives them the way to win this fight. Melonic, a very good Shroud there, stops away the steal, and Hantera looking for that final flank angle. GameWard play this very smart, where they recognize that they're getting flanked from 4-5 angles, and they go into the weakest side flank, using the Sun Disc as well. But there's another fight, it looks like. Cabo been taken down to about 50% HP. Thought that Karmine Corp may try and opt into a Baron off of the resets that GameWard went for, but they weren't able to get away with it successfully, and with Melonic pushing down in that bot side, he's nowhere near close to that tier 2 turret, but it is something that they're going to have to think about. They try and deal with these wave states at all or not.
Inax going back, they're likely going to be picking up. Yep, that is an Infinity Edge for the Zeri as well. So,
ding, ding.
Bing, bing, bing. 80 carries online for both teams. And I think the key thing is that the rest of GameWard's composition is also scaling incredibly well. 3 items now on Checolad. Melonic very, very close to that 3-item point as well. Level 16 for both of these solo laners too. And GameWard might be taking down Karmine Corp in the first game of this series.
Remember what we've seen from these fights previously, whenever there's been a large-scale 5 versus 5 Camillus, and that hostile takeover have been so crucial at turning team fights in GameWard's favor. That is the cooldown to look to win a team fight for the GameWard side. Checo could step up huge, but at this late game stage, I would much rather him sit in the backline and be a DPS threat than that re-engage source. Of course, if you pick the timing rightly, you can get away with it.
Oh, 113 going to be caught out in the top side. Jungle flashes away and stopwatches instantly. That's not going to save your life, buddy, as it's another kill for
not the combo.
Akabane, and no jungler means that GameWard are free to start up the Baron.
Yeah, wrong way around with those. Unfortunately, you want to stop push and bait people into thinking they've got you and then flashing away after. Was unfortunately not the case, and 113 falling grants the Baron to GameWard. Never resting on their laurels though. Karmine Corp, they take that time to try and push in the mid lane. They secure one turret for themselves. It looks like GameWard not going to commit this top lane, and instead a little bit fearful for their base falling. And Karmine Corp so far done a good job at weathering this Baron, but they've still got 2.5 minutes left to deal with it. Camilius, too smart for that one. 90 seconds on this Drake, and now all attention should be down there. Reminder, this is going to be the soul for GameWard if they can get it. As Santera's caught by slow.
That is a massive chunk. He's going to be forced away. No!
Really good.
Doesn't quite get over the wall in time, as Akabane is godlike. The Karmine Corp support is going to be in live in time for this dragon, but GameWard are going to have all the pressure until then.
Exactly, they can push in this mid lane. They may not be able to push in this bot lane. Melonic is getting collapsed on. It's a 3v1. What does it come at the cost of, though?
Yeah, the Gwen is going to be taken very, very low. Checo Lad TPing in as the Gwen, ooh, just goes into that Zhonya's in time as Reckless is dead. Sacred is dead. All the members of Karmine Corp falling low, falling down. Checo Lad off the board. I don't think we need Infernal Soul. We can just end the game right now.
Game number 1 for GameWard. Surely here, the Baron at their backs. 35 seconds on the death timers of Karmine Corp. And only Hantera to try and defend this one. A race against time for them, but one that they should more than easily be able to take.
Inhib falling down as the Nexus Tower is the only thing stood in their way. Pantera might as well be a melee minion at this point, as GameWard claim game 1 of the series.
Oh, buddy. Nice team fight for GameWard in the end. Getting them really everything that they wanted from this game. The victory, namely being the case. And I was a little curious. I was like, okay, they're engaging onto a Gwen. Melonic down on that bot side. How well can you buy time?